Hello and welcome to Post Sports Live. I'm Gene Wong. Joining me this morning to discuss the sports stories that matter most to you in the DMV and everywhere else is our panel from the Washington Post sports staff, starting with in the aisle seat, Neil Fancy Stats Greenberg, in the middle chair from the DC Sports Blog, Scott Allen, and also from the DC Sports Blog to my left, Clinton Yates. A lot to talk about today, particularly baseball with the All-Star game around the corner. We will discuss the Washington Nationals' participation in that event. We also will talk about the Washington Wizards, who have been busy, and the Washington Capitals, who have also been busy in free agency, both teams since their drafts have ended. But off the top, the Washington Nationals have another injury. Stop me if you heard this before. Steven Strasburg is hurt again. Last night, Denard Span got hurt. Also, they have guys like Ryan Zimmerman, Anthony Rendon. They've had guys in and out of the lineup all season. But Strasburg in particular is a going concern right now. So, Neil, I'll toss this to you to start. The Nats have been talking about maybe giving this guy a long-term deal, but given his injury history, is that a wise decision?
No, not right now. You have to make sure that he's healthy. You have to make sure that his mechanics are sound. You have to make sure that he's mentally ready to pitch a game. I mean, there's too many variables right now that if they did extend a long-term deal, it could end up becoming a disaster. So they're going to have to really pick their spots with how they're going to deal with this contract situation, because I don't think a long-term deal is the right move.
Scott, Mike Rizzo's talked about making this the best rotation in baseball. On paper, it had been at one point. Strasburg had been a big part of that. But with all these injuries, does that change how Rizzo should look at what the long-term future is for Strasburg?
Yeah, certainly. And I think even before he went on the DL twice this year, when you're the Nationals and you've got more than $200 million invested in one right arm for the next 6.5 years now, that's got to give you pause about giving anything approaching that to one of the guys already on your roster. I mean, Max Scherzer, super durable throughout his career. Strasburg, yeah, he gets knocked for not being so durable, but last year, people forget, I mean, he made 34 starts. This year, it's like he can't catch a break. I mean, he's got injuries to parts of his body I didn't know existed, the trapezius and the freak injury to the oblique. So the arm seems fine, but I think they do. It's got to give him pause, obviously.
Yeah, well, Clint, it wasn't that many years ago we were talking about whether Strasburg should pitch in the postseason or the Nationals should shut him down. Here we are again. He's second injury, second trip to DL this season. How does that change Rizzo's perspective for his future, or should it change his perspective?
I mean, I don't think you can really think about the future in that long of a term anymore.
Yeah.
You've got to think about what you've gotten, about the present. And if the guy can't stay on the field, you know, it's really difficult to justify not just to your club, but also to fans while you're giving this guy so much money. I mean, I know every time Strasburg starts, it feels like another production, you know, and it's like, what's going to happen this time? And it was one thing when this club didn't have anybody, when there were not names, when they needed something to get people out to the ballpark. But at this point, I don't really know how high his popularity even is as a player on the team. I mean, I know people like him, but if you really had to rank 4 or 5 guys on the team in terms of what they mattered to the average Nats fan, I don't know how high he actually is anymore. Yeah. Not that that's really baseball involved, but that is something to consider.
Well, yeah. Neil, let me ask you this. Given that they have Jordan Zimmerman that's been pitching great, obviously Max Scherzer the best pitcher in baseball right now, does that make it less of a priority for Rizzo to want to keep Strasburg? Because, they, as Clinton mentioned, they have other guys in place that have pitched better than he has and have been on the field.
Sure. I mean, if Zimmerman's still on the squad, I mean, that certainly helps. But you know, when you look at the pitching staff going forward, Scherzer, Strasburg was supposed to be a 1-2 punch of some sort, right? And now it looks like that they may be left with Scherzer and a lot of question marks if Jordan Zimmerman is not on the mound for the team in the foreseeable future. So, yeah, I mean, it's a cause for concern. I mean, the pitching was supposed to be the anchor for this team in terms of getting them through the regular season, making them tough to play against, and getting them to the postseason, and that hasn't been the case with the exception of Scherzer.
Well, speaking of anchors, offensively, we know it's been Bryce Harper for the Washington Nationals. He's having a fantastic season at the midway point just before the All-Star break. Clinton, I'll go to you on this. Is he right now the runaway choice for a National League MVP?
Yeah, I mean, maybe not the runaway, but I'd say he's the clear choice.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
And he's also, you know, what I sort of liked about his game so far this season is that it hasn't just been sort of a getting numbers and the team hasn't really been doing well. I mean, I really think he provides something to that team that when he's not there, they're missing. You know, and when he was a rookie or when he first started playing, it was very much the all-out hustle, just sort of psychological thing. But to me, he's a better player. He's actually advanced in his skills and his awareness with the game, and I think that's something that really has helped the team from just not a fielding standpoint, but a plate approacher point as well. He's a guy that you can rely on at that point in the lineup, and it's really done a lot to help a lot of guys sort of get in position to find ways to score runs.
Scott, is there anyone in the NL that's even close to Bryce Harper for MVP? It's in the conversation with him, or is he far and away the guy?
I think he's the runaway right now, and I think, he leads the majors in on-base percentage and slugging. But you look at where the Nationals are in the standings, despite all the injuries that we've talked about, and I think a lot of people want to weed out team performance versus individual performance. Paul Goldschmidt of the Diamondbacks is up there. He's having a great year, but to imagine this team, given all the injuries, without Harper right now that's terrifying. And he talks about staying in his lane, and it's all about just getting the team W's. Well, the Nationals have done that while he's been doing stuff that hasn't been done since Bonds was around.
Neil's in an open shut case, the best hitter on the first place team in the National League East, or are there other guys in the conversation too?
No, I think Goldschmidt's the only other batter in the NL that can give him that voters would even entertain at this point. But there's a team context in terms of, are they a playoff team? How good are they doing? So, Bryce Harper could very well be the best hitter in the majors if you had that vote, let alone the NL MVP. I think if you had just an open baseball vote, he would probably be the clear winner there as well. I don't necessarily know that it's just limited to the NL at this point. Yeah,
well, Scott, I wanted to touch on something Clinton kind of brought up, that beyond just the numbers, in terms of the mentality, the swagger he brings to that lineup, just how important is that, in addition to the home runs, the RBIs, all that stuff, and how he plays in the field?
Yeah, it seems like every interview he does, he talks about bringing that swagger and having that be kind of reflecting on the whole team. This mentality of, we want to kick the other team's teeth in, and I'm going to say that, and I don't care what you think about that, because if I was in the other dugout, I'd feel the same way about you. He's done that. He's with a few exceptions, he's been hustling, every single time this year. There's really no fault you can find in his game. He's had a remarkable first half of the season.
He's had big numbers too when Scherzer's pitched as well, which is kind of a fun thing when you think about the relationships pitchers have with guys that are playing in the field. He's hit the most bombs, I think, with Scherzer's, and it's really been cool to see him be a part of this team as more of a leader than just another ball player.
Yeah. Another bit of news about Bryce Harper: he's not going to participate in the All-Star Home Run Contest, but he will be there in 2018 when the game's at Nats Park. We can be assured of that. So, well, let's move on to another one of the Nationals' top players. No question, the best pitcher on the staff, maybe the best pitcher in baseball. It's Max Scherzer. Clinton, does it matter to you at all if this guy starts the All-Star game? Because certainly he has the credentials to do so.
I think it does. I think that the Nationals are a franchise. They're celebrating 10 years. They're still very much a part of them with a club identity that, while locally is obviously a big deal, still feels the need to have some benchmarks nationally. And I think if a guy like Scherzer starts the All-Star game, obviously everybody has to pay attention. I think that's something that, as a franchise, actually will mean something to them, even if it is just sort of a very nominal thing, just having one guy play 2 innings. I think it's important to this team and this fan base to see, one of your own in the big spot.
Yeah, Scott, there's been a lot of talk about him deserving to start the All-Star game, but also where that fits into his starts leading into that game. Is it a big deal if he sits out or if he doesn't start the game at all?
I think ideally he would be able to pitch, and he is, I think, the most deserving starter. But the way it lines up with him pitching tonight, and then with Strasburg going down, the Nationals have an off day, Scherzer would pitch again on Sunday, and MLB rules say, in that case, if he does pitch Sunday, he can't pitch in the All-Star game. And I think if you're the Nationals, maybe you talk about Harper saying he'll participate in 2018. Maybe if this game was at Nationals Park, if you're the Nationals, you think for a second about altering the rotation to let him pitch in front of the home crowd. I think in this case, you got to let the rotation kind of stay its course and, have Scherzer to go to the All-Star game, tip his cap, but let him pitch Tuesday and Sunday.
Well, Neil, the All-Star game actually counts now for something. We can debate that it's a whole nother program, but the Nationals are going to be in the playoffs, and they're going to want a home field advantage at some point. Is there a case to be made that you want your top guy being on the mound in the All-Star game to try to help you get home field when it really matters in the end of the season?
Try to help, sure, but how many innings would he actually be in? So the impact that he can have in terms of the final outcome of if this team, if the Nats do get home field advantage, is pretty low. I think the significance is being recognized as the best pitcher in baseball, right? First hurdle, getting to the All-Star game, then being named the starter. That's significant for him, for fans, for the franchise. But it ends there. I don't think that having him pitch for an inning or even two is going to be the defining moment of the All-Star game in terms of win or loss. I just don't see that happening.
Could you make the case that Max Scherzer is the MVP instead of Bryce Harper? Is that fair at all?
That's. I mean, that you could certainly make the case. I mean, we saw last year.
I know for pitchers it's a different.
But the pitching season needs to be like clear-cut domination, no questions asked, right? Like Kershaw last year.
Yeah.
The fact that we're talking about should Max Scherzer be the starter of the All-Star game, that probably means that he wouldn't get recognized as the most MVP, as the most valuable player. Could he? Sure, he'll get some votes, and there's a case to be made, but he would have to be lights out, far and away better than any other pitcher in baseball right now in order for that conversation.
I mean, what if he had a perferent game in another no-no, though? You know,
but if my aunt had wheels, she'd be a wagon. I mean, right now, looking at what we have, I mean, he's not.
Yeah, well, regardless, he's been fantastic. We expect him to continue, both him and Bryce Harper, for the rest of the Major League season. Now, let's move on to some NBA and the Washington Wizards. We know Paul Pierce is moving on, but they've added Jared Dudley and Gary Neal. We also know they drafted Kelly Oubre Jr. Scott, I'll throw this to you. Are those additions enough to help offset the loss of Paul Pierce, or do the Wizards still need to do some more?
I think so. I mean, I think they're good moves for the Wizards. I mean, you're getting much younger guys. Yeah. I mean, the one caveat is that Dudley and Neal combined have played in less than half of the postseason games that the Truth has. And, you know, that's the one thing that you don't know. I mean, Pierce played, I think, a career low during the regular season last year, but it was all in that build-up to do what he did in the postseason.
That's why they brought him here.
That's right. That's right. And he did what he was brought here to do. But I think Dudley and Neal, I mean, you get younger. The defense certainly will be better. I mean, for as much as Pierce did well in the postseason, that you can point to his defense in the Atlanta series as a reason the Wizards didn't move on. So I think it's a great move, or both of them are great moves, and it's enough to offset the loss.
Clinton, Paul Pierce meant so much to the Wizards in his one season here. Obviously, no bigger than the postseason. They got some younger guys. They got a better defender. They got Kelly Oubre Jr., who thinks he's one of the best players in the world. Yeah. Is that combination enough to offset Paul Pierce?
Paul Pierce is going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. None of these three guys is going to the Hall of Fame. Yeah. I mean, and that, like, you just can't replace what he brings. He brought people to the games, I mean, which is a rare thing that a Wizards pickup has done, which is that people came to see him play. And that's, you know, that makes sense. I don't think replacing Paul Pierce was a reasonable goal to begin with. I mean, that's just not possible. But you know, Gary Neal is a local guy. Maybe some people will get behind that story. Jared Dudley, you know, original team headband kind of guy. People, you know, he's got a lot of personality on, you know, on the internet and all this stuff. Like, maybe there will be some interest around it. From a strict basketball standpoint, you're probably going to get some of the numbers back, but from an overall experience, you just can't replace the Truth. I mean, that's why he is who he is.
Well, the Wizards did get younger. We know that, Neal, and it wasn't going to be a long-term thing for Paul Pierce here. Is it now? Is it a good for that team to get younger guys and to get guys in there who are going to play more long-term as opposed to just counting on Paul Pierce for one season?
Yeah, I think Otto Porter Jr. is probably going to be a big beneficiary of getting some of those minutes. And, you know, Dudley also will enable this team to play the way that they did during the playoffs, the whole regular season at the stretch four. He's very good at spotting up behind the three-point line, which is critical. He can spread the defense. I mean, so he may not give you the clutch factor or the name recognition that Paul Pierce did, but the production will be there. And like I said, you know, Otto Porter Jr. will also have a chance to fulfill that role. So I don't think he's going to be missed on the court as much as he would be from a fan perspective of having that type of legend on the team.
Yeah, Scott, Otto Porter had a great postseason, and that should at least give Wizards fans a little bit of relief knowing that he showed very well at the end of the season, right? And with Paul Pierce gone, he's going to step into that role.
Yeah, I mean, certainly an opportunity for him to carry over what he did in the postseason with Pierce out of the picture. I mean, and if he's able to do that, and I think anything they get from Kelly Oubre Jr. this year, I think they kind of view him as a little bit more of a project. Yeah. Anything they're able to get from him this year, I mean, being mentored by guys like Porter, who's now approaching veteran status, and Dudley will help.
Yeah. Well, the Washington Wizards are not the only local team who have been active since the draft. The Washington Capitals have added Justin Williams. They've also added TJ Oshie, two players who have done it at the highest level. Justin Williams, obviously a Game 7 hero. TJ Oshie, a USA hero. Neal, I'll start with you on this. Alex Ovechkin, the greatest player in franchise history. Do you see a day where TJ Oshie is more popular than Ovi?
I mean, he certainly
Here
could.
At least,
yeah, I mean, he certainly could have his moments where he's getting the lion's share of the attention. That's for certain. I mean, it starts too with being an Olympic hero. I mean, you know, you look back on that shootout that he had against the Russians in the past Winter Olympics, and people remember that. I mean, people identify with that probably more so than a Russian skater scoring goals during the regular season. So there's certainly an opportunity for him to have a very high level of popularity. And depending on how Alex Ovechkin's seasons go, he's getting on the other side of 30, which is going to change his his level of play on the ice. I mean, it really depends on how Oshie's playing. But I tell you what, the first shootout goal he gets at Verizon, he will by far be the most popular player in all of DC.
Right. Well, Scott, is this like a renewal of the Cold War between the U.S. and Russia, between Oshie and Ovi? Or does Ovi, the guy's 3-time MVP, he's going to go down as the greatest player in the history of the Washington Capitals. As great as TJ Oshie is on a national stage for the United States, does Ovi have the lock on being the most popular player here?
I think so. I mean, long term, I think, as Neil kind of alluded to, maybe for a week or two at a time, Oshie could have the spotlight shining brighter on him. I mean, we had some fun during the playoffs.
Yeah.
We asked who are the top 5 most popular athletes in DC, and a lot of us put Paul Pierce on there over John Wall. I mean, if you step aside from that one moment, this is right after the I called game shot and the playoff heroics, surely that's ridiculous that Paul Pierce is in the top 5 most popular. But I mean, if Oshie, like Neil said, scores a shootout goal for that week, with that and the Olympic background, I mean, I think he could steal the spotlight a little bit.
Yeah. Clinton, where do you stand on this in terms of a hero for the USA and the best player, one of the best players in hockey history?
I think Ovi's, I'm not going to say his star is fading, but I just think that, like, there's been a lot of players that have been very popular underneath Ovi. I mean, it used to kind of be an Ovi, maybe Green and Backstrom in a certain other orbit, but he was so far away. But now, this team keeps having playoff failures. Ovi's the face of that. I don't know how much that helps him in the long-term popularity thing. I mean, he's the greatest player in the history of the franchise, but I think there's a lot of fans of this team that are eager for other personalities. And a guy like Oshie can come in. He's already very popular. If you saw what he did to try to get on the cover of NHL 15, he had a lot of funny sort of online campaign bits.
Yeah.
He's got his baby in Instagram photos. I mean, he is the kind of player that if you're looking for somebody else to root for on this team, he can step into that role automatically because he's a bit of a media darling and he's not sort of a big egomaniac. You know what I mean? He's just a fun dude, and at least from what we've seen of him so far in his time in the league, never mind his Olympic prowess.
Well, Neil, let me throw this to you. Is it possible that Justin Williams, if he has more heroics in Game 7, is going to be more popular than both these guys? I mean, that's why they brought him here, right?
Look, if you score the game-winning goal to win the Stanley Cup in Washington, D.C., you're going to be pretty popular, that's for sure. But, touching on what Clinton said about T.J. Oshie, I mean, he's more out there, right?
Yeah.
Alex Ovechkin isn't really, he's fan-friendly, but it's not interactive, right? He's not going to be posting Instagram photos of his kid, not that he has one, but that type of, that type of interaction. I could see Oshie becoming a fan favorite just because he's out there more embracing social media and being a part of the whole experience. So that will certainly help him. But if Justin Williams becomes Mr. Game 7 in DC, then all bets are off because he's going to be a king here.
Well, Neil, you have the last word today. I know you guys have lunch plans, so we'll let you get out of here. For Neil Greenberg, Scott Allen, and Clinton Yates, I'm Gene Wong. Remember to follow us on Twitter @PostSportsLive. Thanks for watching. We'll see you next time.